Hey everybody, it is the 4th of July and today we're going to celebrate by finishing our mushroom patch, which is pretty exciting for us. Some people may be like, celebrate the 4th of July with a mushroom patch, and I'm like, yeah! So we're gonna do that. So let's get growing. Today's gonna be done in 3 phases. We're gonna have sorting out the water, sorting out the fencing, and getting things actually going. So David is probably going to start with doing the water first, and we're going to get that figured out, make sure that we have full coverage on the area before we have to start, trying to thread it through fencing and make it more complicated. And then after that, once we're sure that we have everything being fully covered, we're going to put the fence up, and we're actually devising, it's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be a solid fence because we want it to be accessible for us to harvest. But we want it, inaccessible to all the cats because they do awful things to places where I want to grow food. So after we get the fencing sorted, that's when I'll come in with the straw and the hose and just layer it down and put down our spore and be ready to go. So now let's get started on that water system. This rose bush is struggling. The one that we transplanted. I'm not sure that it's going to pull through because it's pretty crunchy. But you know what, if you don't try, then you get nothing. And sometimes if you do try, you still get nothing, but at least you had a shot at having something. But this this rose bush, it may still recover, because the canes on it are still green down here. So if those turn brown and gray and sad and dry out, then it's pretty much lost all hope, but we'll see. If it decides to die all the way, then I'll just replace it when bare root season comes around, and that's in February. So we'll have a blank spot there. It'll be fine. David is hiding behind the tree here.
Found me.
Hi.
I'm a tree pig.
Hi.
Hi. So we're going to be putting in some of these little tower drip system things today. They look like that and basically fan out in the umbrella. And they'll be fed off our existing drip lines and keep this area nice and moist. As you can see, I'm in the shade right now. It's kind of perfect for growing mushrooms, except the ambient heat. Long story short, this is what we're doing. The water system is going to be in very shortly. It shouldn't take a lot of work.
So while David is working on the water over there,
Almost done!
almost done, I'm coming over here and looking at my rose bush over here. You can see it's got all these perfectly round holes cut in it. Everywhere. Ouch, thorn. But see, it's got these little holes, and it looks like someone just took a hole punch into my leaves. Now, this is actually not a pest problem. This rose bush is supporting a mason bee population. So mason bees will actually use these rose leaves. They have different preferred foliage that they like to use, but they like to cut these perfectly round leaves, and they will actually wrap their pupating larvae in them. So they pupate in these perfectly made little cocoons that the parents have made out of leaves, which is really interesting. So when I see that, I don't get all upset and grumble about, oh, something's destroying my rose bush. No, it's like, hey, we've got a good population of pollinators around here, and I'm happy to let them have some rose leaves, because the whole bush is fine. See, there's still plenty of whole leaves on here, but they just really like the rose leaves. It is a little unsightly, but I'm totally fine with it. And this rose bush will probably have another 1 or 2 massive blooms before the season's over.
Yep.
It's alive!
Wait, come on.
You got my lens wet.
Well, now ideally, I don't want this spraying my house because any water that hits that runs down and will hit the foundation. And so the goal would be that we are able to water this without soaking the house. It's not always 100% possible, but it is definitely preferred. All right, next step, let's get those fences in. Okay, so we are gonna build our fence for the mushroom area out of this. We're basically gonna do two 7-ish foot panels, and we'll get an exact measurement as we do it. And the idea would be that we'll, in the middle, have it secured, and on the outside have them each independently be able to flap open. So we can access the wine caps and those oysters and those oysters and those oysters all without trumping through. I mean, in theory, we could do one gate, but that means we'd have to walk across everything. And just because of the limited space, we're going to create 4 points of access instead of 1. And that way we don't have to waste space that could be used for growing.
Or risk losing harvest because we have to walk on it.
Yeah.
This is why you don't want to walk on mushrooms. You would have a mushroom.
That's my son.
You're proud of this?
Yes. Here. This is the fence we're going to use. 4 foot, I guess, cattle panel?
Not
What is
cattle
this?
panel. This is 2x4 welded fencing.
This is 2x4
Welded wire.
welded fencing wire stuff.
Welded wire fencing.
That's the one, the very one indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, we've been using this in the backyard for the grass, and now we're using it for a chicken run and the lavenders.
Yeah.
Protecting those. So today we're gonna do it for mushrooms. Alrighty then. Now, we got this really fancy fence tool, which is great for cutting this wiring. Really great. It was like click, click, click. It almost brings joy to your heart when you get to do it. Alas, come time to need it, it's not where it's supposed to be. Maybe you've gone through the similar things.
We still can't find it, and it's been several weeks.
Yeah. Nathan, will you hold that for me, bud?
It's very upsetting.
Yes, yes it is.
So the fence is up! Huzzah! So we use the 4-foot fencing, and I think that a cat will definitely think twice before deciding that they want to come in here and poop, because it's just too much effort for a bathroom trip. Because really, do you want to vault over a 4-foot fence when you gotta go? But anyway,
Nope.
so this is split into 4, or well, it's not split, but it's 4 sections here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts. You know, 1 for each end, and then we have a few in the middle. So we have this center post right here is the center for 2 sections. So this is going to stay stationary, and it's going to have a pivoting spot for the fence for us to open it on either end. So we've got little tiny like baby carabiners.
And we're stuck in here for the rest of our
Yeah.
lives.
Typically the people will not be opening it from the inside, so it won't be this difficult to get the wrist action. But so there's 2 carabiners on the end, and then we can just pivot and get in and out.
Yay, we're not stuck.
Ouch! I am stuck by the rose bush.
Yeah, well, besides that.
And then just clip it back. And then
Ta-da!
obviously it's not a super strong, stable fence, but we're not trying to keep out large animals. The goal here is mostly to keep cats out. Otherwise, I think that it's going to be fine. So it's plenty strong enough to withstand a cat leaning on it. So now we've got the water in here, we've got the fence set up. We can do some more fine tuning with the water later if we need to. But this is pretty much ready to go, which is super exciting. What do you think? Is it cool?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And not that it's ever gonna happen, but what if a goat leaned on this?
If a goat leaned on this,
You'd have to wonder why there's a goat in our front yard.
yeah, first of all, we'd have to worry about why there's a goat in the front yard. But you know what, with the carabiners, it would take some work, I think, for a goat to still get into it. They probably could eventually, because they could break the weld on here. but
After a while.
I think that ultimately even a goat would have a hard time getting in.
But they could.
Hey, so what's all that popping and sizzling and freedom?
Fireworks.
Well, it's the 4th of July. So some neighbors are down there with some of those, what are they called? The little
Poppers.
Poppers that you just throw at the ground. Those are actually fascinating. Those are really fun to like pick apart and look at.
Yeah, but you have to be careful not to burn yourself.
Well, do you know how it makes that popping sound?
Fire.
Fire? No, those are the ones that you're throwing at the ground. They're not lit.
I know.
So it's just teensy tiny little itty bitty rocks that are in this paper that are mixed with just a tiny bit of gunpowder, so that when it hits the ground, the friction of the rocks going against themselves is going to just spark that gunpowder just enough to make a little popping sound. Maybe even a tiny spark if you see it, like in the dark.
And
might
you
see
never
it,
want to step on it just for...
Yeah,
Thank
I wouldn't
you.
recommend stepping on them barefoot.
You were weird enough to pop one in your fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just,
Weird. I'm a superhero.
Just that little bit of friction is really cool.
You said, ow!
What you doing?
Watering my poop.
Wow.
What?
You know, poop jokes never get old. Even if it's old poop.
So, what we're trying to do right now is just saturate everything before we start layering in the straw, because if this is dry, it's going to be even more challenging to get that mycelium growth happening. So you want to have it as moist as you can before you start with your layering.
So these are the spore that we got to plant. So wine caps and golden oysters, pink oysters, and Italian oysters. Now, obviously, these look a little different than what you'd normally see, and that white stuff in there is not mold. That's the growth of mycelium. Now, ultimately, when a mushroom is being prepared to grow by its root system, which is the mycelium, that white stuff will coat the entire ground underneath where that is going to grow. And that's the idea of putting that poop and the straw down. We're creating a base for that mycelium to grow in. So we'll spread this kind of in layers underneath that poop, underneath that straw, and give it a good environment that's moist and ready to grow mushrooms in. As promised, we told you we would let you know where we got these. So this came from Fungi Ally. Fungi Ally. That's right. So if they are awesome, you can check them out there. And this is pretty exciting. I think all of these mushrooms total cost around $100, maybe a little more for this amount. That is quite a bit of mushroom spore. So pretty exciting. All right, so what's that stuff feel like?
Gross.
Yeah?
It's millet.
Like the seed? Like the bird seed?
Yeah.
Really?
Um.
Can you show a handful?
Yes, I will show you a handful. So it's a bunch of millet because it holds the moisture really well. And then it's got all that white is mycelium growth.
Interesting.
And then we just kind of sprinkle it all over the place.
And of course, she's making sure she stays in the section
Yep.
for this type of mushroom.
Yep, I'm going off of this post here.
Now, I mean, that's at the beginning. I'm sure the mycelium is not going to know we have sections, so we may end up getting some cross mycelium growth, but who knows? If we end up having, what, Italian oysters on one side mixed in with pink oysters, we're going to know the difference pretty quick.
Yeah. The Italians here are going to be brownish colored.
Hey, cutie.
Hey,
What you doing?
I'm inoculating. Now I am spreading this thickly because we have such small areas. And if I inoculate thicker, I'm hoping that we'll have faster mycelium growth.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, this amount of spore can inoculate how much? Lots and lots and lots, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're probably going to have spore to give to friends at the end of all this. Maybe not.
Or we try another method and we grow it in buckets too.
Hey, look at that. Another project. And that will be a total first attempt. I don't know.
Now you'll see me doing this, packing it down. Now this is because we are trying to get mycelium to grow, which is obviously like really, really fine growth. And if there's too much air, there's nowhere for that mycelium to grow. It needs the surface area. So,
can you explain what mycelium is? Because that was something that I did not recognize or understand until I literally saw it.
Sure.
I just think that's an important aspect to understanding mushroom growth.
Okay.
And like terms like inoculation, I don't know that everyone understands what that is until they're told.
So, mycelium is the white stuff that you're seeing here in this growth. Mycelium are basically like the roots of a mushroom. Now, the mushroom part that we actually see above the surface, that is the fruit of the mycelium. So, if you're thinking of it more like a traditional plant, mycelium are the root system and the plant structure of the mushroom, while the mushroom itself that comes up is the fruit, because that bears the spore or seeds of that plant. So that is how the mushrooms reproduce, is through the actual fruit that you see on the surface. And they're a little bit different than your traditional plant because they are not a plant, they're a fungus.
So when you pick the mushroom, then you cut it at its base, don't dig up the base.
Yes.
Because that's killing the root.
Right.
Or the tree, the plant.
And there are some mycelium colonies that can stretch hundreds of yards. Like, it's one single organism that it's just taking over the, not the surface, the below the surface of the soil. And actually really good fungus growth in your garden is a really good indicator of having a healthy microclimate. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just eat whatever mushrooms come up in your garden because, oh, that means I have a healthy microclimate. No, it just means that you have a favorable microclimate for fungus. Doesn't mean that that fungus is edible.
In the forest, when a tree falls, you'll often see a lot of mushrooms there because there's a lot of dead organic matter, and
right.
It's really well primed for that microclimate you're talking about.
Yeah, a lot of the mushrooms that are grown commercially or culinary mushrooms are frequently grown in hardwood logs. Decaying wood is usually like the best for a lot of these different varieties. Shiitake mushrooms, it actually is Japanese for like wood growing or something like that. Like wood is in its Japanese name. Oysters are unique in that they don't need the wood, so that's why we're going with 3 kinds of oyster mushrooms. And there are other mushrooms, of course, that don't need the deadfall, the wood. So we are doing what we can because we just don't have access to a lot of those logs, and even if we did, where would we put them? That kind of situation. So this just happens to work out because we have a spot that would be perfect for growing mushrooms. The roses struggled here for a long time, not because of the temperature, but because of the lack of sun, which is something that mushrooms really like. They like having that shade because the sun will just dry them out. So if they can stay in the shade and stay damp, that's perfect, and we have a spot that we can do that in. So that's what we're doing. Alright, I'm finally finished. Let's check it out. I've been working hard, getting all these layers in. I didn't quite have enough straw to do as many layers of the wine caps, but I think I'm okay with that because I think I would rather experiment with maybe, we have another spot in the backyard that we can put some mushrooms, so I think I want to experiment some more with putting some wine caps in the back too. So I'm okay with only using about half the spore that we had. But here, let's check out what I've done. In the back here, we're going to have the Italian oyster mushrooms. Those are going to be larger, kind of more brown. Most people are familiar with the white oyster mushrooms, but these ones are going to be kind of a brown color in the back there. The next section is going to be pink oysters, and those are going to be like a hot pink, like obnoxiously pink, and I'm really excited about those. The third section here is going to be golden oyster mushrooms, and those were just stunning in the images. They're going to be like really vibrant yellow color, and those are going to be really, really exciting to have just as like a contrast for the other oyster mushrooms if we get them coming in at the same time. And then the fourth section here is going to be the wine cap mushrooms, and those are going to be your big, beautiful, like Alice in Wonderland umbrella type mushrooms. They're not going to be red with white spots because those are, you know, deadly. But these ones are going to be really big, beautiful, dark, kind of a burgundy colored mushroom, which is why they're called a wine cap, because they look like they've been stained with wine. But they're gorgeous, big, beautiful, delicious mushrooms. We've tasted these ones at a farmer's market when we went on our anniversary trip last year. Fell in love with them, so we're really excited to grow them ourselves. One thing that really excites me about all these different kinds of mushrooms is not just about the color, but that every type of mushroom has its own flavor. So even though we're growing 3 kinds of oyster mushrooms, it's not just, ooh, it's a different color oyster. It's that each and every one will have its own unique flavor, and I can't wait to try them all, especially side by side, and get that comparison, because I'm sure that they'll have some similar flavors, but I've been doing some more research, and there's going to be some differences between them, so I'm really excited to taste them. So yeah, they're inoculated. Now it's just going to be a matter of maintaining that moisture, which is the biggest thing with the mushrooms, because now that they've been inoculated, the biggest thing is to like leave them alone. So water and leave it alone. Sounds pretty low maintenance to me. But one other little anecdote is that today is the 4th of July, and 3 years ago today was the day that I put in my deposit on my goats when they were little babies. So, and that's the reason why Betsy is named Betsy Ross, was because it was the 4th of July that we put in the deposit. We felt that she needed to have a patriotic name. So, but yeah, happy deposit day to Betsy and Jane. 3 years is not much in the grand scheme, but there's just been so much learning and experience that has happened in that 3 years. So I'm really enjoying just looking back on how much has changed in our lives over those 3 years, because we didn't have any experience with goats or anything resembling a goat. No sheep, no cows, no, like, it was complete starting from scratch. All right, we're doing this. So it's been a blast, and I'm so happy with my little goats. So that's all that we have for you guys today. I really hope that you enjoyed watching us go crazy on these mushrooms. But and we can't wait to share with you when they come up and what we like and maybe what we don't like. I really hope there is no not liking, because it's a lot of work. But as always, this is your urban nerd with a goat herd saying that you can grow where you're planted. Oh my gosh, you guys, I went and checked our tree and there's a ripe peach. I'm so excited. David technically had the first ripe peach, but this is the first one that I've picked for the year, so I'm saying that David's doesn't count. So I'm gonna, it smells amazing. Let's see. It's juicy and it's good. Oh yeah. It's a keeper. There's juice running down my chin. These are amazing. I'm so happy. Now, anybody who doesn't remember that tree, here, that tree right there, yeah, that one. It dropped all of its fruit last year, so we got 0 fruit because it had peach tree leaf curl, which is awful. It's a fungal infection that the tree gets. But long story short, we finally have fruit and it's loaded with peaches, and now they're starting to come into season and they're so good. So I'm gonna start needing some ideas on what to do with all these peaches, because there's a lot of them I don't know that there'll be a ton of them ready at any one time, but I'm looking forward to trying like a peach cobbler or making, I've made peach syrup before from the grocery store, and I think that this would be amazing to do with some homegrown peaches. Anyway, see you guys next time.